Hello! For everyone watching out there, my name is Mike Nichols. I'm a reporter at the Grand Rapids Business Journal, and you are watching one of our video live stream chats. If you've never seen one of these before, what happens is we sit down with someone at their office, and we actually live stream right up to the website, and you can watch it at the Grand Rapids Business Journal online. Today, we're talking about technology, and we are here with the people at OST. I'm going to introduce you to Scott. Scott, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and about OST?
Great. Well, I'm Scott Montgomery. I manage the security practice at OST. Been doing that here at OST since early 2009. Been in the business now for over 30 years. And it's really our job to get into things that people don't want us to get into. That's it in a nutshell. So, we built this practice. I personally built the deliverable process in 2001. This process has been used approaching 1,000 times now for about 250 unique customers. The mix of customers is over 100 of those are financial, whether they be banks or credit unions or other organizations that manage financial resources. About 3 dozen healthcare organizations, and then over 100 of other types of organizations. Really the reason we built this practice was early on we found it was very difficult for organizations to grasp what their internal security was like. And we thought it was very important for business owners, boards of directors, management teams to have this trust but verify process that they could go through. And so in a nutshell, that's why we built it.
And that's actually what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about IT security, and you guys have done a lot of things in the community where you've seen mistakes happen.
Right.
You've seen people not being cautious. What are some of the mistakes that companies make regarding IT security?
Mm-hmm. The one that's not on the list is some organizations just choose to not go through the process. So that's one thing we want to talk about. You can't bury your head in the sand. Everybody's got security issues, from the very smallest to the largest organization out there. You can't fix what you don't know is broken, and that's our job, to come in and tell you what's broken. Now, what we found broken has been very consistent through many, many organizations. And we compiled a list several years ago based upon the number of assessments that we've done, and provided some statistical relevance to these. The first issue that we identified was this misconception that a vendor or a manufacturer is going to provide security as part of the product that they install within your organization. And that's just not true. Their job is to get a product purchased and installed and working. Security is low down on the list. Now, we're starting to see a change in that because there's much more press. But everything from security cameras that are not properly locked down to computer systems that do proprietary things in manufacturing and healthcare or banking that just are not properly configured with security in mind. Just because it's working doesn't mean it's secure.
What's the worst case of negligence that you've ever seen in your time?
A lot. We're going to get that down further in the list. There's a couple issues that led to hundreds of thousands of mortgage documents that were almost publicly available, and healthcare organizations that were publicly had information, links on their website to documents that should have never been made public. There's many instances. The one thing you'll know about me is we'll talk in generalities about the issue, but I won't tie it back to a specific organization. And that's because our primary job is to protect our clients. But there's been some major issues that we've actually discovered. And the scary thing is those issues were actually in play for sometimes 3, 4, 5 years before we were actually hired to come in, go through the trust but verify process, and bring them to somebody's attention.
Now, who are these hackers that are out there trying to get in people's security breaches? Mm-hmm. Who are these people? Well,
hacker's an often overused term. A hacker in years ago used to just be somebody that would use something for its unintended purpose. Okay, the fact that we can burn CDs or copy movies, you can thank a hacker for that. Okay, but the fact is, a hacker generally today can be anybody from a disgruntled employee to a teenager that just bought a new book at Barnes and Noble and is trying to try out the new security hacks that are shown in the book. It can be politically motivated, corporate espionage. There's many. It can even be just the simple, they stumbled across your IP address or were using your guest Wi-Fi and determined that there was something that they could do to gain access to something that they shouldn't get.
How often in Michigan are companies hacked yearly, do you think?
Yearly? It's daily. It's, companies are hacked every single day, either by disgruntled employees or internal or external resources. The fact is that there's not a statistic out there that'll tell us accurately what's going on because many organizations, one, don't know what occurred, or two, don't choose to share that information with the public.
Well, then let's go back to talking about more mistakes that people make and how they could know not to do that.
Right. Probably the biggest one is weak and trivial passwords. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but password 1 and Summer 13 are not good passwords. Yet, we can scan an organization, and whether there's 3 user IDs in their environment or 100,000, there's going to be a good percentage of those passwords that are considered to be weak and easily guessable. And password 1 is one of them.
What are the best types of passwords to have? Is it multiples of both numbers and letters or just numbers? What's the best kind to have?
Well, there's a lot of factors that are required when you create a good password, okay? And my definition of a good password is one that we don't easily discover through the course of an assessment or is not easily guessable. Almost any password you create has the capability of being cracked given an infinite amount of time. Now, the infinite amount of time could be an hour. It can go very, very quickly. Your goal is to outrun the person you're next to when the bear's chasing you, right? You don't want your password to be first on the list. So having a mixture of lower and uppercase, having a special character or a number, not basing it specifically on a dictionary word, and having it be a certain length that makes sense to you. Those are all factors. And we get into some very technical information about how do you make a password so it's almost uncrackable. And length is going to have a lot of consideration in there. But again, starting with a dictionary word is not the way to go. Many organizations require you to have a case change and a special character or number. But what we've shown over the years is they always capitalize the first character and they always end it with a special character or a number. That just doesn't work. You have to mix it up. So capitalize the second character. Put the special character in the middle of the word. That's really what's going to throw people off and keep it so it's not easily cracked or guessed.
How do consistent passwords play into it?
Consistent passwords are, again, a big issue. You've got network administrators that may have the same password represented on 30 or 40 different accounts. Anything that has high-level access to the organization, they may assign the same password. And based upon that, if one account is provided to somebody and the correlating password is provided, you don't ever want that password to be used for different accounts. And so you've got to provide some uniqueness to a password.
Are there ever walls that you guys find in security updates?
Any walls?
Like that you guys have to break through? Are there patches that you guys find when you go through?
When a company like Microsoft provides an update or a patch, it's usually to fix a specific issue. In many cases, it's because there's been a vulnerability brought to somebody's attention or brought to the manufacturer's attention. It becomes a big issue when there becomes a public exploit for that vulnerability. Once it becomes a public exploit, then somebody can take advantage of it and gain access to the system or device in a way that it wasn't intended to be used. And that's really where the issue is. So keeping your manufacturer updates current is a big issue. And it's a big job because we not only have Microsoft, we have every product manufactured by Adobe, whether it be Adobe Air, Acrobat, Reader, Flash, Shockwave. There's many of these products that need to be kept up to date. And if it's software running on your PC, you've got to regularly check and verify that the systems or applications are properly updated.
What areas in a company's technology are the spots that get hit the most?
Certainly anything that's public facing, has a direct connection to the internet, it is going to be the target from outside of your organization. Internal, disgruntled employees are going to be targeting systems that contain the most valuable data, whether it be customer data, financial data, or anything that's protected under certain regulatory requirements.
What does scanned documents on multifunction devices have to do with hacking?
Right. Well, we've actually discovered this issue probably about 10 years ago now. It just made the press about 4 years ago, and there's been a lot in the press about it lately. What we're really talking about are these combination printer, scanner, fax machines. They're the big copy machines that are plugged into the network. It's designed so people can not only print to the device, but they can put a document on it, hit a button, scan it, and have that document delivered electronically to their PC so they can email it. The problem that we have is these devices all have internal hard drives. And in many cases, the information that's been previously scanned or printed is retained, and it's not ever deleted. So because there's not good security in keeping unauthorized people off of the devices from really just using a web browser, we've had many instances where one or thousands of documents containing private or personal information has been readily available. And it becomes a big issue if the document or if the device is leased and they return it to the leasing company at the end of the lease.
Now, does any of that change if the technology is on a mobile phone? Like, for example, if someone uses CamScan as an app on their phone, does that at all affect how you guys have to do security with it?
It can, because the documents on those image scanners are stored on your phone, on your smartphone. So if your phone falls into the wrong hands and you haven't gone through the proper security measures to pin protect or encrypt that device, then yes, those documents are available if somebody has access to your phone.
So they can crack your phone through your computer and your computer through
Not
your phone?
Not necessarily through a relationship with your computer, unless there's a syncing program. The case that we know about using iPhones and Macs or PCs through iTunes is that the iPhone is backed up. And now the same thing can take place through an Android or other devices. So if you lose your laptop and it's not properly protected, or you don't have good passwords set on these applications, then yes, they may have access to the contents of your phone. They're not going to gain access to the phone remotely unless you authorize that. But data is being synchronized through so many different platforms now, including cloud-based applications. The first line of defense is a good password to keep people off of those applications.
Let's get into default login credentials. Where does that play?
Well, pretty much anything you buy at the store now that has a green or red flashing light can be plugged into your network. Security cameras, your TV, your VCR, thermostats for your home. These all have active network connections through your home and your business. And what people don't realize is the manufacturer does a great job of allowing you to set up your own credentials, set up your own unique user ID and password. But they don't necessarily tell you have to go back and change the default password that was used to set up the device. There are still many wireless access points out there, or multifunction devices that we talk about, or any other device that when plugged into your network, if you've not changed the manufacturer's default password, somebody else can gain access to that. And it's simple as putting the device in Google and typing default password along with the device name, and there'll be documents that'll tell you, hey, try admin and admin for user ID and password and gain full access to the device. Once they have access to the device, they can change and do whatever they want. What
happens with open network shares?
Open network shares are just a way that without having a file server, we can share information between computers. It's sometimes done by mistake. Somebody right-clicks on a folder in Windows, hits the share button. Next thing you know, that information is available to anybody on that network that has an Explorer application. And if they have files that are supposed to be private, they're no longer private. Anybody has access to them.
What would you say to a company who has an employee where a computer is stolen, lost? How do companies prepare for that kind of thing?
Well, that's just it. You have to prepare for it. Most often in corporate America, we react to things being lost or stolen. We don't have a game plan in place. There's a lot of good technology out there that will secure a device so that when it does fall into the wrong hands, it's a boat anchor. It doesn't do anything for anybody. Case in point, having a PIN number assigned to your smartphone so that after a few minutes, it locks and you're inconvenienced by typing a 4-digit number to gain access to your phone again. That's very important. There's encryption software for PCs. A password alone for your PC does not keep the bad guys out. It just won't work. So you've got to have some form of encryption on the device to keep that information properly secured. There's even LoJack that you can buy for PCs. LoJack in a generic sense, so that if your PC is stolen, you can contact the company that you've purchased the software from. They can find the device, and they can even turn on the webcam and take a picture of the person that's using your PC. Wow. So that's something very important to turn over to law enforcement if something's been lost.
How important is it to keep the antivirus updated?
Antivirus and passwords are two of the first layers of security for any organization or for any device. So the biggest mistake we see in antivirus is people disable it because there's this perception that it makes the computer slower, or they don't update it regularly. I mean, there are updates for your antivirus signatures that are taking place multiple times a day. So you've got to turn on the automatic update process.
How often should you update it?
At least daily. I would recommend turning on the automatic update process. So whenever you have an internet connection, it's going to ping the antivirus company and determine, is there actually a published update for you?
Even if you have that automated process still put on, is there still stuff you need to do?
Possibly. You have to regularly check to make sure that there's not a new version that the software company has released, because sometimes those do not automatically roll up with the updates. You have to actually physically go out and download the update.
I think the last one we want to talk about was Wi-Fi.
Right. Yeah, there's this perception that Wi-Fi can be secure, and it's just never a fact. We pretty much know when we walk into a coffee shop, if there was a orange plug, an RJ45 jack that we needed to plug our computer into, we can pretty much rest assured that the network connection we're attaching to is owned by that coffee shop, because it's a physical connection. If we walk into the same coffee shop and we see a Wi-Fi network called Coffee Shop, we have no idea whether that's owned by the coffee shop or by the hacker on a laptop sitting at the next table over. And so there's no way to confirm the ownership or usability or security of that Wi-Fi connection.
So wait, are you telling me that the FBI surveillance van Wi-Fi that you guys have here, it's not really FBI surveillance van?
Chances are I don't have anything to do with that.
And FBI surveillance van guest?
My
is
guess
that one not real?
it's just an educated guess. I don't believe that has anything to do with the FBI.
Okay.
And it certainly would not stand for Federal Bureau of Investigation. It's just a commonly used acronym. But Wi-Fi is dangerous because there are devices that are available. For instance, we've got this little magic box, and I'm not going to show what's inside the box, but the fact is that's battery operated. I can leave that behind it in any location. And here's what it does. If you're using a secure wireless network, one that's been created specifically for your organization, using this device, we can power it up. It can see that secure Wi-Fi. It can create an unsecured Wi-Fi of the same name, and then go through a process to kick everybody off the secure Wi-Fi one at a time, and they'll automatically connect back to our box. Once that connection takes place, we simply throw a message on that computer screen that says, please re-enter your WPA2 key. And the user will enter the key not knowing that we're recording that and using that key so we can gain access to the private secured network that they were supposed to be connected to.
What exactly is that box? Can you show viewers what it is and what it does?
It's just a little battery-operated proprietary device built with commercially available products, and cost is less than $200. It's a combination of technology and social engineering to gain access to networks that we're not normally allowed to gain access to.
You had something you wanted to show on Wi-Fi, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it has nothing to do with a corporate installation. I want to make that clear. But again, one of the mistakes we see is if you're driving through a neighborhood and you see 30 wireless networks called Linksys, then you know that they're not properly configuring their wireless network. So what I want to show is just an open source firmware for a commercially available wireless access point. And I'm going to show a couple of the settings that we want to see people go through to keep their home network or small business network a little bit more secure. I'm not going to guarantee it's going to keep the bad guys off, but it's going to make it much harder. Okay? So really what we're looking at here is an open source firmware. And the first thing you're going to want to change is this encryption method here. If you do a drop down, you want the encryption to be enabled. And in all cases, you're going to want to try to use the best encryption possible for this Wi-Fi. And in this case right here, we're going to use WPA2 Personal. Okay? And you're going to install the algorithm, and you have a choice here of TKIP or AES. We prefer to see AES used when possible. And I'm going to unmask the encryption key that you're going to use. What you're going to do is provide a long key, something that's not a single dictionary word. It's not the address of your home. It's not your last name. It's something that can be easily remembered, that makes sense to you, that you can document, because you're only going to provide it to individuals that need it the first time they connect. And in this case, the security key is, this is my encryption key, exclamation point. Properly formatted sentence, capital letter, and spaces. That's going to be a decent encryption key that you're going to be using it. Again, a common mistake that we see is just a common address, street address, or a last name of the person that owns the device. Again, you're going to want to change. You're going to want to change the name of the SSID, the broadcast name of the wireless network. We always recommend changing the default. Again, the devices you buy are going to usually have the manufacturer name as their default SSID. You want to change that to be something more personal to you. You're also going to want to change it, and our recommendation is to use the word private or secure in the SSID. And the reason you want to use that word private is you don't want to have anybody mistakenly think that they can try to gain access to that. And just by putting the word private, it should imply to them that it's not for their use.
If a company's security does get hacked, does it make them more of a target for others? Do hackers seem to sense the blood in the water, so to speak, and swarm?
The fact is, a lot of hacks are publicly made available after they take place. I mean, there are websites dedicated to showing off the websites that somebody has hacked. And once that happens, and they announce how they did it, then you've got every 16-year-old with a computer out there trying to do what the hacker did. So you do become a target.
What kind of costs is a company looking at if they get hacked financially?
It depends on how good a lawyer you have, because you're going to get lawyers involved, you're going to get public relation companies involved, you're going to get a lot of people like me involved, not only to understand what happened, but to make changes so it doesn't happen again. So these, once you get hacked, it can be a very, very expensive thing to go through. The fact is, I go back to that trust but verify process. That process that we built is much more affordable than handling an issue after it's taken place.
We'd like to move into a time of questioning now. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to post it on the website. I'm going to start with some that I have, just from listening to you talk. Let's say I'm a company CEO. I find out that my security has been breached, I've been hacked. What steps do I take next?
Containment is the first thing you need to take a look at. Often what people are doing is they're without going through a specific process, they're trying to fix the issue without understanding what the issue was or what damage had been caused. So containment is very, very important. Trying to get a very good handle on what systems were breached, how they were breached, and what information or data was lost and where it went is very, very important. Obviously, you want to be able to stop the hack as it's happening, but you also need to understand what that hacker gained access to, because that's what's going to really determine what legal action you need to take or which customers need to be contacted and what are your next steps.
Is there a way for employers and employees to protect themselves? For example, let's say an employer has been negligent, and employees still want to protect themselves. Is there a way they can do that?
Well, first thing, if an employee does determine that there are potential security issues, documenting those the concerns and providing that information to management in written form, it is very, very important. I don't think there's a business owner or manager out there that doesn't want to know if there's a potential issue. From a user standpoint, not being a target, making sure that you're using good passwords, you're not sharing your network credentials with another employee that can represent you and leave you trying to figure out, who it was, what they did, and we see this a lot where people will send emails pretending that they're somebody else. You just don't want that to happen.
We have one question from online, and that's, do you have any tips when it comes to corporate social media passwords, which oftentimes are shared among several employees?
Any shared account it's not a great idea. The fact is, if you have social media and you've got multiple people accessing that, just document who it is that has access to that, and try to coordinate who's doing what when. You don't want to share passwords with more information or with more people than you can really control. You've got to have some auditability, knowing whose fingers are on the keyboard when something's being changed.
I remember when LinkedIn kind of got hacked, and there was that big thing about that. I think it was Jeremiah Grossman, who's the founder and chief technology officer of White Hat Security. He said that, when an airplane crashes, there's investigations, there's all, there's a huge follow-up. But with breaches, there's almost nothing. What are the liabilities for a company having their security breached? And then, legally, are they held responsible by law to protect their customers and employees?
Well, it depends on what information is lost. There are all different forms of breaches. Sometimes the breaches are relatively benign, where somebody is able to get maybe passwords, but they're a hashed password that's not easily crackable. Or they've lost access to email addresses or what we call other benign information. Yes, it's inconvenient. It doesn't play well for PR for that organization, but it's a whole different level when an organization loses, names, credit card numbers, social security numbers, addresses, things that are considered private in our industry. When that happens, you will see lawyers involved, because there will be lawsuits, there will be restitution made, and there's usually much more of an investigation. The sad thing is there's so many breaches nowadays, you don't see a whole lot of prosecution for what's happening, especially if it's been an overseas breach. In other words, a hacker that's overseas is very difficult to prosecute.
What are the ramifications a company could face? Are we talking jail time? Or
probably not jail time. There could be lawsuits. There could be the restitution cost of providing somebody with additional privacy protection. That's becoming a very popular response is paying for somebody to get credit protection based upon the breach that took place. So that can be very expensive. There's also the cost of PR and lost customers. So that's there's almost always lost customers based upon big breaches like that.
What's the answer to the question of who's responsible?
Certainly the management is going to be responsible. They have overall responsibility. The IT staff, the people that are responsible for the system, yes, they do have responsibility. But sometimes, I've talked to IT individuals that were forced into doing a non-secure installation because it was a system that needed to be brought up quickly and needed to be open. And based upon that, there's going to be potential security ramifications. So again, that's why we go through the assessment process, so we can let the technical side of the organization know technically what needs to take place, and we can let the management team know what the true, real implications of an improper security situation could be, and they can come together and fix those issues.
It's a very complex issue, and what do you think should be the training people seek to deal with this kind of stuff, especially if you have someone just coming into the industry out of school or people that are still in school, in business college or technology schools? What do you think people should learn while they're training to prepare for this?
Be paranoid. I mean,
Be paranoid.
really, if every installation, if every software product you install, you take a dual path and knowing that you want to get it up and running, but you also want it to be secure, you have to think about it in that standpoint. We're no longer able to just say, let's just get it up and running and worry about the issues later. You've got to understand what those potential issues are up front.
You say be paranoid. Do you think that there's no way to ever have a good, solid, cemented system that will keep people out?
I mean, again, I've been doing this for 30 years. I went into the business thinking I had 5 to 10 years and I'd be onto something else because there was going to be no such thing as a computer system security issue anymore. And it's just exploded. We can barely keep up with what the potential issues out there in the public, and we're discovering new ones all the time.
Where is this going to go in 5 or 10 years? What is it going to look like?
We expect that we're going to be a lot busier. Honestly, it's the problems are not going away. The product manufacturers, the developers, they may be getting better. They're trying to anticipate what the security issues are, but at the same time, we're making things more and more publicly available. And by doing that, we're making them more and more visible to everybody on the internet. And information gets shared very, very quickly. In fact, years ago, when somebody discovered a vulnerability, to write a public exploit for that vulnerability sometimes took 6 months to a year. Now we're talking days before somebody publishes a public exploit and makes that available to everybody with a browser. So we have a lot of people performing the act of hacking that were not in the business years ago.
It must feel like a never-ending battle.
It is a never-ending battle.
We have another one from a user, and that's how can companies protect their proprietary valuable data from theft by their own employees? I guess that fits into the very bleak perspectives you've given us.
Again, you've got to provide them access to the data, but what you need to protect is their ability to remove that data and take it from your organization. So, locking down thumb drives, blocking people from having access to their private email while working, in your organization. It sounds drastic, but it's nowadays I can take a thumb drive, plug it into a computer, and download gigabytes worth of data. Probably easily most of your corporate data will fit on a thumb drive. And based upon that, we can take a lot of it with us very, very quickly. And there's not a whole lot of auditability or understanding that the information's been copied or removed at all. We're just making a copy of it. So the original is still there. We don't know it's gone. So you've got to go through the process of keeping things locked, making sure that there's dual levels of responsibility or separation of responsibility, so that if you've got 100% of customer activity, you've got employees that don't have access to all 100%. They only have access to bits and pieces, really the bits and pieces that they need to do their job. But what we're finding is that corporations, for the most part, do not even know where their proprietary or protected data is. You've got to go through an inventory process. You've got to understand and classify your data, because if you don't do that, it's probably being stored on somebody's local hard drive, and it's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be up on a secured server drive someplace.
If you are an employer and you find an employee has been tampering, what do you do?
Well, obviously there's going to be HR issues that take place very, very quickly. So, but you've also got to have a plan. You've got to have a usage policy and a security policy that the individual, the employee, has actually acknowledged, because they may not think they're doing anything wrong.
Would you let them go right away, or would you, if you find out that they know what they're doing and they do?
If it was me and I thought there was any disgruntled activity that took place, I certainly wouldn't leave them there for 2 weeks to potentially do more damage.
Is there a way that you think people can overcompensate and make security so walled off that it's almost unproductive or even miserable to have to deal with?
I think that's a fine line. Security issues are real, and technology can be used to reduce the risk of security issues or unauthorized access. But there is a line that can be crossed, and as soon as it makes it difficult for somebody to do their job, then you need to try to measure that and back that off a little bit. But let's make it clear: typing in good password should not be the inhibiting factor for implementing good security. People are required to have good passwords nowadays. I had a CEO tell me that it's no longer an excuse that an employee does not have a good password. They need to bring the knowledge of that password into work with them, just like a carpenter needs to bring a hammer into work with them. If they don't have the right tool, they can't get their job done, and they shouldn't be working here.
So then what does like A+ grade kind of security look like? Who are you really impressed with? What's your dream heavenly vision of great security?
Great security to us is when we go in to do a security assessment and we're not able to breach the environment or gain access to things that we shouldn't, and we come back with a very, very short list of recommendations. Our assessment is real-life security. We're not there to throw theoretical issues at an organization. It's truly what damage could be done, and based upon that, what corrective actions can take place. So therefore, if we assess the environment and there's not a lot of recommendations, that organization's doing a very good job of keeping people out.
What are some of the features you'd find in solid security?
We would find no passwords were crackable because of either the encryption that they were using or the fact that users have been properly trained on how to create a good password. There may be even things like multi-factor authentication, so that you not only had to have a user ID and password, but you had to have a security key that you had to read off or type in to gain access to a proprietary system. Physical security is going to be big. You don't have unused network jacks live in the lobby. You don't have unprotected Wi-Fi. You may not have Wi-Fi at all within the organization. The organizations that have the best security also do a good job of educating their employees, going through a program that teaches them what can go wrong and how they can protect themselves and their organization is very important.
Is there any company or any business you work with that you think sets a really high standard for security and you would encourage others to follow the example they've set?
Again, I can't name names, but most organizations that have done a good job in security have done so because they have a desire from the top down. It's dictated from the management team all the way through the organization that people will do what needs to be done to keep that organization in the data security.
We are a business journal. Is there anything that you personally want to say to the business community of West Michigan to know about security? Anything we haven't touched on yet?
Just, think about going through a trust but verify process. Understand. Don't put your head in the sand and assume because the IT department says you have no security issues. Don't just assume that you have no security issues. That's why we do what we do. We have a whole different perspective on what to look at. And that's why we never read our papers, our own papers in college. We didn't proofread them ourselves because you look at the same thing over and over again and you're just going to not see the typo. You've got to have somebody else look at it, somebody that's not attached to the organization.
Any wrap-up comments?
Just thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. We appreciate it and hope that we can provide any additional help to anybody who needs it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being with us there, viewers. You can see all it on the website. Thanks and take care. Bye.